On the morning of December 6, 1917, Halifax, Nova Scotia, was a wartime harbor under pressure. Ships, soldiers, rail traffic, dock workers, families, and military rules filled the city with urgency. The First World War had turned the harbor into a strategic gateway for convoys crossing the Atlantic. Dangerous cargo moved close to ordinary neighborhoods because the machinery of war demanded speed. Before dawn, people woke to another cold day beside the water. Within hours, a collision in the Narrows would create one of the largest human-made explosions before the atomic age and tear open the city. The French cargo ship Mont-Blanc carried explosives bound for war: picric acid, TNT, benzol, and gun cotton. The Norwegian vessel Imo was leaving the harbor. In the confined channel, confusion over signals, speed, position, and right-of-way brought the two ships together. The collision itself was not the final catastrophe. It started a fire aboard Mont-Blanc. The burning vessel drifted toward the waterfront, drawing attention from people who did not understand the cargo. In disaster history, the most lethal moments can be the minutes when danger looks spectacular instead of deadly. Crowds watched the smoke and flames from windows, streets, yards, and the waterfront. Some sailors knew enough to flee or warn others, but the warning could not outrun curiosity, confusion, and limited communication. Halifax had no modern mass alert system. The harbor was noisy, crowded, and shaped by wartime secrecy. Many residents saw a burning ship and thought of a fire, not an explosion capable of flattening neighborhoods. The city was given a short interval between collision and blast, but an interval is not the same as a usable warning when people do not know what they must survive.
When Mont-Blanc exploded, the force was almost beyond local imagination. A blast wave smashed buildings, shattered windows miles away, threw fragments across the harbor, and sent a cloud high into the sky. The ship vanished into pieces. The Richmond district, close to the waterfront, was devastated. Houses collapsed or caught fire. Rail yards, factories, churches, schools, and streets were torn apart. People were killed by pressure, debris, fire, and collapsing structures. Others were blinded by flying glass as they watched from windows. The harbor did not host an accident. For a moment, it became the center of a weapon.
The explosion created a surge that swept parts of the waterfront and the Mi'kmaq community at Turtle Grove. The disaster moved through the city in several forms: blast, fire, water, cold, and flying debris. Survivors crawled from ruins into a landscape filled with smoke, snow, screams, and broken glass. Many rescuers were injured themselves. Hospitals were damaged or overwhelmed. Families searched for children and neighbors without street signs or recognizable landmarks. The physical city had changed so suddenly that rescue became a struggle not only against injury, but against disorientation.
Nearly 2,000 people died, with thousands more injured and many left homeless. Eye injuries were especially common because so many people had been watching the burning ship through windows when the blast arrived. The scale of injury strained doctors, nurses, volunteers, and relief workers. Winter made everything worse. Snow and cold complicated rescue, shelter, burial, transport, and medical care. A disaster in warm weather is already hard. A disaster in a northern December forces survivors to fight exposure while they are still bleeding, searching, and grieving.
Relief moved quickly from nearby communities, across Canada, and from the United States. Boston sent doctors, nurses, supplies, and financial aid, creating a bond still remembered through Nova Scotia's annual Christmas tree gift to Boston. Trains carried help toward the city, though weather slowed some journeys. The response showed regional solidarity, but it also revealed the fragility of urban systems after a sudden blast. Water lines, power, transport, hospitals, housing, and communication all mattered at once. Modern cities survive through networks, and Halifax learned how quickly those networks can be cut.
Investigations looked for blame in the conduct of ships, pilots, captains, harbor authorities, and wartime procedures. The legal story was complex and contested. Early accusations focused heavily on individuals, but the broader context included a crowded strategic harbor, hazardous cargo, imperfect rules, and the pressure of war. Catastrophes often produce a demand for one guilty name. Sometimes there are names, but there are also systems that make a terrible outcome more likely before any single mistake occurs. Halifax forces both kinds of questions: who acted wrongly, and why was so much danger so close to a city?
The explosion changed building practices, emergency planning, medical response, and public memory. Reconstruction reshaped damaged neighborhoods, including the Hydrostone district, designed with fire-resistant materials and planned streets. The disaster influenced treatment of mass eye injuries and emergency coordination. Yet rebuilding also involved displacement and unequal recovery. Working-class neighborhoods bore heavy damage, and communities with less power often had less control over how recovery was organized. As in many disasters, the official story of resilience can hide uneven suffering unless victims and neighborhoods are named clearly.
Photographs of Halifax after the explosion are stark evidence. They show streets of broken houses, ships damaged in the harbor, churches without roofs, rail yards twisted, and people standing beside ruins in winter clothing. The images can look like scenes from a battlefield, and in a sense they were. The war had reached a home front through logistics, cargo, and proximity. These photographs matter because they show how industrial and military systems can turn civilian space into a danger zone. The blast was sudden, but the conditions that placed explosives beside homes were built over time.
The memory of Turtle Grove is especially important. The blast and surge devastated the settlement, and survivors faced loss of homes, family members, and place. Disaster histories often center downtown ruins and official institutions, while smaller or marginalized communities become footnotes. Halifax's full history requires attention to every shoreline touched by the explosion. The harbor connected people, commerce, empire, and war, but it also distributed danger unevenly. Remembering Turtle Grove widens the story from a spectacular blast to the human geography of who lived closest to the risk.
Today, the Halifax explosion remains a warning for every city that moves hazardous material through crowded spaces. Ports, rail yards, pipelines, chemical plants, and storage depots still require trust in rules that most residents never see. Safety depends on transparent procedures, trained crews, enforceable distances, emergency communication, and humility about worst-case scenarios. The harbor that exploded before dawn teaches that modern systems can create dangers too large for ordinary senses to measure. A burning ship may look like a spectacle, but hidden cargo can turn curiosity into catastrophe in a single flash. The disaster also changed how people thought about the home front in wartime. Halifax was not a battlefield in the usual sense, yet the city was wounded by the logistics of battle. Explosives, shipping schedules, harbor rules, and naval urgency brought distant conflict into kitchens, schools, churches, rail yards, and bedrooms. That connection matters because modern war often depends on civilian infrastructure. The blast revealed that danger can travel through supply chains long before it reaches a front line. People far from trenches can still live beside the materials that make war possible. Halifax rebuilt, but the harbor kept its memory. Memorials, archives, family stories, medical records, and annual commemorations continue to mark the morning when ordinary waterfront life became catastrophe. The story remains powerful because it joins small human actions with enormous stored energy. A signal misunderstood, a ship in the wrong place, a crowd at windows, a cargo hold full of explosives. Each piece alone seems manageable. Together, they formed a chain no city could survive unchanged. The warning is simple and severe. Systems that move danger must be designed for the day when ordinary mistakes happen.